You must master triggers if you want to break free from your sex and porn addiction long term. What if I told you that your triggers, those moments of intense discomfort or even panic, aren't your enemies, but are your teachers? Imagine a life where your triggers, instead of controlling you, become the very thing that empower you. Sounds impossible, right? Well, we're going to figure that out today. I'm going to talk about triggers. I'm going to define what they are, the role that they play in the habit cycle, and share with you 4 things that you must know about triggers if you want to be successful long term. My name is Craig Perra, and for the past decade, my team and I have been helping men quickly and sustainably break free from compulsive sexual behaviors, and we proudly support their partners healing from betrayal trauma. The Mindful Habit System is the #1 ranked sex and porn addiction treatment program in the world based upon publicly available, verified client testimonials. What is a trigger? A trigger is an energy shift in the body from positive to negative. They are emotional and physical responses activated by certain situations, people, or memories. Triggers are what you get when you enter fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. Fawn mode is people pleasing. For example, telling your partner what she wants to hear, not being honest. Those are triggers. They are the body's automatic alarm system signaling perceived threats. Good news, bad news. Bad news, they aren't going away. Good news, there's a lot that you can do about them and learn from them. Now, this episode is focused on negative triggers. There are also positive triggers because for some of us, we don't only get triggered when we're down, we get triggered when we're feeling good. So keep that in mind as you're listening. It's not just positive to negative, it can also be negative to positive, and that reward mechanism kicks in. I deserve a treat, I deserve a release, so be mindful of that. I want to share with you 3 different versions of the habit cycle. The first one is from the great book, The Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg. And here's how he breaks down the habit cycle. Phase 1 is the cue. That's the trigger. That's the prompt. Then there's the routine, also known as the reaction, and then there is the reward, relief, or escape. Now, pay careful attention to that reward word, and you're going to see it again, and let me tell you what I mean by that. In Atomic Habits, the mandatory book that everyone must read, and I have a link down below in the chat where you can click on that link and purchase that book on Amazon. Atomic Habits by James Clear is awesome. And here's how he describes the habit cycle. First is the cue, the trigger, then the craving, then the response, and then the reward. That's an important word, and it's very important for you to understand that all behavior, with very few exceptions, none of them apply to most of the people listening to this podcast, all behavior is need-seeking behavior. And that means when you're acting out, that's a reward. That's an escape. That's relief. You're numbing. You're coping. You're giving yourself a reward. You're using it to manage stress and anxiety. In the mindful habit, we break it down a little bit differently. And let me share with you the habit cycle that we use. First is trigger, then are the thoughts, then you take action. The reason why the thoughts are there because those thoughts habits are so damaging, considering that 2/3 of our thoughts are negative throughout the day, and most of those thoughts are subconscious. So literally our mind is operating in the background, framing our reality. It is critical that you understand your thought habits as well as you understand all your other bad habits. So understanding this cycle leads me to the next part of this episode, and those are the 4 essential points about triggers. Now, as you're listening, put these triggers in the context of the habit cycle from Atomic Habits. Remember, cue, craving, response, reward. In the mindful habit, there's a trigger. Then you have thoughts that literally flash into your brain instantaneously, and then you take action. Here's point one about triggers. Your triggers are biologically hardwired, and they are not going away. There is a long history of evolution that led to the triggers that you receive. These triggers are designed to protect us and alert us from danger. I want to talk for a little bit about the evolutionary purpose of triggers. Triggers are your body's built-in alarm system. They are designed to keep you safe. In prehistoric times, our ancestors faced life-threatening dangers daily, like predators or natural disasters. So the body evolved to respond quickly to these threats to ensure survival. Triggers were crucial. They activated the body's fight, flight, or freeze response. We've since added fawn to that. They activate the body's response almost instantly, enabling quick decision-making in dangerous situations. Now, that's not, thank God most of us are not living in that life or death scenario, but our bodies still react in the same ways. Now, instead of lions or environmental threats, our triggers are related to stress at work, conflicts in relationship, memories from past traumas. You are programmed to react this way. This means that when you feel triggered, your body is responding as if it's protecting you from a serious threat, even if the threat is emotional or psychological rather than physical. So, do not base your recovery on the frequency of triggers or the presence of triggers. The presence of triggers does not mean that you are not kicking ass. It means that you need something, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So you gotta pay attention, and you'll see in a few minutes, most people are paying attention to the wrong thing. Triggers are normal. Reducing them to shame or frustration or resentment or anger is not, and you can do something about it. Okay, let's get to point two. Point two, your triggers are needs indicators, meaning it's your body's way of letting you know that you are in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. When you're triggered, your body goes into survival mode, and here's what happens in the body. When a trigger activates, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, sounds the alarm. This is the part of the brain that is responsible for detecting threats and triggering that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. The hypothalamus then signals the release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, which prepare your body to react. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your senses become heightened. It's almost as if you've been hijacked. Your central nervous system has been hijacked. You're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, and left unchecked, you are going to continue to react to numb, cope, and escape, for example, as you've been numbing, coping, and escaping from pain and discomfort since childhood. These physiological changes in the body are meant to give you the energy and focus to handle immediate danger. But when this response is activated by non-physical threats like a stressful email, or your partner asks, "Where are you going? Can I see your phone? Come here, I have a question," right? Your body reacts the same way, resulting in discomfort, anxiety, pain, and the urge to escape or react impulsively. Now, understanding that this response is automatic and biologically driven helped me realize that my trigger is on a flaw or failure, and they're not yours either. They're your body's way of trying to protect you. This awareness can shift how you respond, turning a reactive moment into an opportunity for mindful action. You can use your triggers as needs indicators. They are telling your body that you need something, not to numb, cope, and escape, but to address the discomfort and learn to deal with that discomfort. More on that later. And this is mandatory because you must honor the golden rule of behavior modification. And that is, to break a habit, you have to make the right habits that meet the right needs. So when you train yourself to use your triggers as needs indicators, you are now meeting those needs in a healthy, constructive way so you can emotionally regulate to create positive outcomes by reacting mindfully instead of mindlessly. Point 3, your non-sexual triggers are way more important than sexual triggers. What if I told you that your sexual behaviors are not the real issue? They are the symptom. The triggers, the true triggers, lie much deeper. Remember this expression: the behavior is the symptom. It is always the symptom. In 12 years of helping thousands of men in 30 countries all over the world, I have never, not once, worked with a client whose primary problem had anything to do with sex or porn. Was there intimacy disorders? Yes. Were there issues around sex and masturbation? Of course they were, but those aren't the primary issues. Okay, those are secondary. The real triggers: conflict, stress, anxiety, fear, failure, not being good enough. Those are the triggers that you need to pay attention to. The non-sexual triggers stem from daily life pressures, from work, stress, financial worries, conflict in your relationships, self-doubt, and fear of failure and not being good enough. These triggers activate the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, placing us in a heightened emotional state where we're more vulnerable to self-destructive habits. Most people come to me obsessed with focusing on their sexual issues, their sexual urges, but there's a problem with that because that which you resist persists. It's not the sexual triggers standing alone that are driving the loss of self-control, the loss of personal agency. It is what I call the accumulation effect, emotional overload leading to sexual acting out. So what happens is you get a trigger, you get another trigger, you get another trigger, more adrenaline, more cortisol, more stress, more anxiety, and they build, they build, they build. Eventually, you lose self-control. There's a boiling point where we escape through sexual behavior. It feels like a release valve, right? The pressure's instantly off. So the compulsion is not rooted in the sex itself, but a desperate attempt to alleviate accumulated emotional pain. Again, I have not worked with a single client whose primary issue has anything to do with sex or pornography, yet they are obsessed with sex or pornography in their traditional current treatment, and that's actually making it worse for them. Okay? Acting out sexually is a symptom. The behavior is always the symptom. If you can address the roots, the stress, the fear, the unresolved conflicts, you start to control the branches, including any unhealthy, compulsive sexual behaviors. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pay attention to your triggers. I want you to pay attention to your non-sexual triggers more than you're paying attention to your sexual triggers. What if the next time you felt the urge to act out, you were able to trace it back to the source and address the underlying anxiety, conflict, and stress? You use your triggers as needs indicators. I promise your life will change. Remember, they're not going away. Point 4, your triggers can become your greatest teachers. I love my triggers. Listen to them with curiosity. Ask yourself, what's going on underneath the surface? Declare out loud, I am dysregulated. I am triggered. There's been an energy shift in my body from positive to negative or negative to positive. If it's a positive trigger that sets you off, And I need to pay attention, because if I don't pay attention, I'm going to slip into automatic instantaneous. Why? Because you've been slipping into automatic instantaneous in using sex as a coping strategy in most cases since you were a small child. And just think for a moment, if you were to measure the frequency, how many times have you used sex, porn, masturbation, camming, whatever, right? The whole list of behavior. How many times have you used sex to deal with your emotional state, to feel better? Not a sexual moment, but used sex in some capacity to emotionally regulate. Think about that starting at 8 years old, 9, 10, 11, 12, wherever you started this journey. Think about how many times it has happened. What wires together, fires together in our brain. Think about that pattern, that deeply entrenched pattern. You are not going to get rid of your triggers, but you can learn from them. When I used to get triggered, I'd feel so bad about myself. I'm like, what a piece of shit. All the work that I've done on myself, the thousands of dollars I'd spend on myself, the shitty way I treated my wife, what an absolute piece of garbage. Here I am, years later, still getting triggered. And let me tell you, I still get triggered today. You won't believe some of the ridiculous thoughts that I've had, some of the preposterous ideas that I've had. I got one trigger once, and this was a sexual trigger. It was a really tough time in my life, medically, and I got triggered to put on a disguise, like a fake nose and a mustache with those glasses, and I would cover up my tattoos so no one would recognize me so I could go to a strip club, right? That's ridiculous. I could have said to myself, what a worthless piece of crap you are. Here you are helping people. Here you are preaching all over the internet about your recovery, and here you are getting triggered. I don't feel that way. I know that I'm going to get triggered, and I know, and I want you to know this too, no matter how much work you've done on yourself, no matter how far down the road you go, you're only 3 feet away from the ditch. And if your problem's pornography, you're about 1 foot away from the ditch, right? You can never forget that. You are going to feel at some point in the future like you haven't done a stitch of work on yourself. You're going to be at this low point. You're going to get pounded with triggers. The thoughts are going to come flooding back. You're going to have what my therapist used to call euphoric recall. You're going to remember those moments, and you are going to feel like you haven't done a stitch of work on yourself. But that's okay. You know that. You know that time is going to come. Life is hard. You are going to be challenged in the future in ways you have not yet even imagined. Of course, you're going to get triggers. But when you use them as needs indicators, when you use them as your teachers, instead of reacting to them, it's your body's way of telling you you need something, and you take action on those needs proactively, your entire life will change. So, here's what I want you to do. I want you to start paying attention to your, not just your sexual triggers, but the non-sexual triggers. Anytime you are dysregulated, anytime you enter fight, flight, run away, freeze, don't, right? How many people listening to this get angry at their partners when they get asked questions? Run away, go in the other room, right? That's flight. Freeze, right? Why can't you say anything? Like frozen or fawn. Yes, and you tell your partner whatever you want to hear. Pay attention to those triggers. And here's a simple exercise. The next time you're triggered, use that trigger as the prompt, as the cue to ask yourself, what is my body trying to tell me right now? In summary, your triggers aren't going away. They are biologically hardwired, and they are your body's way of telling you that you are in a state of perceived threat. Now, if that threat is a real one, then you run like hell or you fight like hell, but that's not what we're talking about, are we? Right? We're talking about the emotional triggers that set us off. We are stressed. We are lonely, we are anxious, and I'm recording this podcast on November 26, 2024. We are entering the holiday season, and what happens in the holiday season? Mental health inpatient goes up, suicide is up, calls to the hotlines are up, more in hospitalizations, more slips, right? The holidays are cloaked with this feel good and joy, but for some of us, they're actually traumatic. If they're not traumatic, you're at least unable to regulate your central nervous system in an effective way. Now, there's a lot more that you need to do in order to be successful long term, in order to sustain this growth in a healthy, constructive way going forward. So, if you want more support, visit mindfulhabithelp.com and check out our core training program. We've changed the pricing structure on that. The core training program is $99 per month. There is a 7-day free trial, so there's absolutely no risk. Your card's not going to get billed until 7 days. And as always, with all of our coaching programs, we offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. We do not want your money if we're not helping you. But if you are a fit for your program, like the 475 people who reviewed the Mindful Habit so far, 70% of them coming to me from traditional treatment and other programs, their words, the Mindful Habit system is revolutionary. So if you want a taste of that, visit mindfulhabithelp.com. Thank you so much for listening. Embrace your power of choice. Feed the right wolf inside you. Happy Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. And if I missed one, I'm sorry. Have a wonderful holiday. Time to get the life you deserve. Visit mindfulhabithelp.com and take the first step on your journey. Have a great day.